There's something about Coco Jones, the future of R&B. In a new class of R&B artists like Normani, Chloe, Summer, SZA, and so forth, Coco Jones is one who has slowly drawn attention. With her new album, Why Not More, we do get a clear introduction. Once a part of the Disney machine, she didn't initially come out as a bona fide star, told by her former label that she wasn't marketable, implying it was because of her skin tone. Colorism. A long hiatus ensued, but nevertheless, she persisted. And with 2022 as her comeback year, and snagged the coveted Grammy Award. With more singles under her belt, and a debut album here, it has arrived, the streets are talking, and surprisingly with mixed opinions. She's one of the best vocalists out here. I cannot stand her tone. Is she here to save the genre? Her label is dropping. Does this indicate the longevity that she may see in the future? Or is she going to just be another figure in R&B who audiences will not appreciate enough? Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and welcome back to another video. And today we talk about Coco Jones. As outlined in our intro, she is a new face in R&B and has strived to raise the bar of excellence, at least in my eyes. But it seems like the level of appreciation varies amongst crowds. The R&B purist versus the vocal lovers versus the mainstream listener, and a few floaters in between. And with her debut album that came out in April of 2025, Why Not More, it's time to finally discuss Coco Jones. What really had me itching to do this was not only her Taste single that came out months ago. That got a lot of buzz, negative and positive, we'll get there, but a particular tweet that sparked a lot of pushback to my surprise. Someone tweeted, "Coco Jones is out-singing every relevant R&B artist right now. You may not like her tone, but her vocal ability is so ahead of what's expected in R&B right now." And this sparked debates. I think a lot of underplaying, and I was shocked to see the visceral responses. People seemed very split over her talent, the merit of her talent, her music, her sound. And this is when I realized there's something about Coco Jones, and I want to get to the bottom of it. I feel like we get these very talented artists, and because they're not packaged 100% how you want to hear it, people will create a narrative or they will downplay someone's talent, and I personally think that this is happening in this case. But today we're going to preface all of this with Coco's journey to this point, but also discuss her strengths and the criticisms as well that she has received on her sound, her tone, her imagery, vocals, and promotion. She was on The Breakfast Club a couple weeks ago promoting her album, and there was a bit of a viral moment that we will touch on. But this is an overall analysis, if you will. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment down below. What did you guys think of Coco Jones? What do you guys think of her new album? Go over to my Patreon once you're done with this. I reacted to Why Not More in full, top to bottom. Go over to Patreon. Link is in the description. Hit that subscribe button down below. Y'all know the drill. It's free $99. It doesn't cost you a thing. And actually, guys, we have something very exciting today. I received my 100,000 subscriber plaque in the mail, and I just wanted to share with you guys on camera. It comes with a little note from YouTube CEO and the coveted, just some extra packaging. Here it is, folks. This is my 100,000 subscriber plaque. So this is just a testament to hard work, but also your support. So you guys will probably be seeing this in the back of my videos. Actually, but let me put it there today. Yeah, buddy. So thank you guys so much. And without further ado, let's just get right into the video. So we are going to start this off with a Coco crash course. This is to familiarize yourself with the story, the timeline. Coco was born Courtney Michaela Ann Jones, born January 4th, 1998, so at the top of the year, and she's technically a South Carolina girl, but she was raised in Lebanon, Tennessee. And no, we're not talking about the Middle East.
What was it like growing up in the Middle East?
Middle East? Are you serious?
You're from Lebanon, right? I'm asking you a question.
Lebanon, Tennessee?
Tennessee. Oh, all right,
Yes.
cool.
Her father's a former NFL player, Mike Jones, who played for a multitude of teams, and her mother is a session vocalist. A session vocalist is a singer or vocalist that is specifically hired for recording studio sessions. So it can be heavily inferred that she did develop music passion from her exposure to it at a very young age. Now, as the eldest of three, she knew what her passion was at a very young age, and her parents helped foster and cultivate that. Her desire to sing and perform truly blossomed at her kindergarten graduation.
Coco Jones, age 11. She is a powerhouse performer whose talent will blow you away. Take a look at this.
Singing, it's what I do. It's my life. If I have to practice day and night.
Talent shows, and at only 9 years old, she was already in meetings with casting heads for Disney Channel.
I had this crazy manager, but she did one thing right. She introduced me to someone at Disney Corporate.
Okay.
And I was like, Miss Ma'am, here's my album. DIY, made on Windows PC. Take this, spin it, and call me.
Now, class, we have a pretty clear pattern between these videos, okay? If you've been here. Connections, networking, and Radio Disney's next big thing. Okay, well, Coco really got her jump start here. I didn't know this before researching, but she competed in their third season, which was from about 2010 to 2011, and she finished as the runner-up. And from here, she was engulfed in the Disney world. They snatched her right up, and this is what they tend to do. If they like you, if you are in some of their programming, they will find ways to introduce you and keep you in front of that Disney audience. So she was casted in several recurring roles in shows like So Random and also Good Luck Charlie. But she finally got her shine and big break in the 2012 musical movie Let It Shine alongside Tyler Williams. And the perfect part about this movie was, for her, she was given the ability to also not only flex her acting skills, but her vocals. And she played this teenage pop sensation. If you've seen it, you know that this is a fun film and is kind of regarded as a Disney Channel classic, but it was the most watched movie of the year for kids and teens in 2012. Now, her Hollywood record deal afforded her the opportunity to begin shaping her sound and recording original music. But here, it wasn't necessarily her in the driver's seat, right? As a young girl, they had an idea of what they wanted her music to sound like.
You know what? At the time, I didn't really understand who I wanted to be. I was like, oh, you just do what people tell you to do, and that's how you get there. I had no personality. I just knew how to execute. I was like a robot. I have no idea who I am. I'm literally just a copycat of whatever version of me I'm told to be. Mariah Carey, Rihanna's new CD, I love. Those are just some of the people off the top of my head. Taylor Swift.
Never heard of any of these people. Don't know who any of them are. Have no clue.
You're a reporter. Yes, you have.
So this led to her debut single, Holla at the DJ, coming out. And it was premiered, though, and pushed by Disney. And little did fans know, she did struggle to get this single released.
Holla at the DJ comes out, thank God. That was a fight. That was a fight.
This led to her debut EP, Made Of, in March 12, 2013. And she'd start going the teen star route, touring with Mindless Behavior later that year, and so forth, with full intention to keep the heat up and sustain it. So you'll see Coco interacting with many prominent Disney stars. She was on that trajectory. But unfortunately, after her big break, things stalled within her childhood career, withering from the stream of social consciousness. And mind you, unless if you were an avid Disney Channel watcher or you were young, you probably hadn't even heard of her before. So she didn't get to take off. It was like her career was shot before she was fully able to excel.
There was supposed to be a Let It Shine 2, point blank and period. So don't have a sequel, don't have a show, don't have a record label.
So when I wouldn't get jobs, I was like, what happened? Because I literally did everything y'all asked me to do. What happened? Because I sang harder than some of these girlies. Everyone was like, she's such a star. Oh my gosh, like she's the next big thing. Like it just felt like, maybe I am a star.
You got humbled.
I mean, yeah. And then I got, woo!
But what people weren't privy to at this time is that she was actually dropped from Hollywood Records in 2014, and her album was completely shelved. And this was the beginning of what felt like almost a 10-year hiatus. Homeschooling, graduating, and moving to LA at just 17 years old, she had been prepared to put her energy and efforts into making her dreams happen, which was mainly singing. But all of the roadblocks along the way stopped her. And this left Coco to fend for herself herself without big promotion and also independent. In September 2019, she released her EP HDWY, and there were several setbacks which we will dissect, don't worry. Posted a video in 2020 where she transparently shared what happened, what really happened, alluding to colorism being a huge factor in the stalling of her career. Why she went away and she was no longer engulfed in that Disney machine. But Coco would come back officially in 2022 when she signed to High Standards and Def Jam Recordings, releasing her first single Caliber in March 2022, first major label single, and coming back swinging with her second single ICU in October 2022. And not only did this single become her very first entry on the Billboard Hot 100, thank you very much, it gets better. The song went platinum and won Best R&B Performance at the 66th Annual Grammy Awards, snagging a Justin Timberlake feature on the remix to really push it over the top. And this was at a time where R&B audiences, or certain R&B audiences, were begging for more passionate, traditionally infused, old school reminiscent R&B, vocal focused. And Coco delivered that. She delivered. Her major label debut EP, What I Didn't Tell You, released March 2022. And this helped further re-solidify a fan base, get people on the wagon so that we could start really amping up this train. And she embarked on her very first tour. Once an actress, always an actress, she was cast in the role in the Fresh Prince reboot Bel Air in 2022 as Hilary Banks. And she's also been able to snag BET Awards, NAACP Award, etc. So she's already stepping into big shoes and was somewhat presented as this great hope for R&B. And with her sixth EP, Coco by the Fireplace, releasing in November 2024, her debut album finally arrived, Why Not More, which was released April 25th, 2025. So very recent as to filming this video. And the streets are talking, especially the R&B streets. Finally, we're getting a full body of work, a full album, and it has built up to this moment. Or what is the future of Coco Jones, and how does she fit into the future of R&B? So let's talk about her strengths. I want to start this video on a positive note because I want to make it very clear where I stand. And this is my effort. This is me propping up the positive, because a lot of people say, oh, y'all only talk about the negative. The negative shit gets clicks. It does. So we're going to participate in some positive reinforcement because I have a lot of good things to say and I really want to break this down. So let's talk about her strengths. Number one, her vocals. In a time where whisper singers have had their cake and eaten it too, it's not only nice to hear someone on the track who's enunciating, but has a vocal richness and isn't afraid to explore the depth of her voice. And that range is needed. I don't think it's as deeply appreciated as it can be, especially when there's so many artists that seem to blend together right now, aesthetically, sonically, and in this case, vocally as well in R&B. Coco has this very nuanced vocal texture with this rasp. She's able to go from using her head voice to using the depths of her voice, the fullness and richness that her vocals fill on a track. And when a vocalist kind of gets on a mic and really starts going to town, gymnastics. We are doing vocal gymnastics. Coco gives that energy. She really is playful on the mic because she has that skill set. If you watch Coco's performances, you can really hear it. Her live performances are often better than the recorded track. And you don't get that a lot these days. And vocally, I also want to highlight her passion. Her music is not null and void of emotion. You can hear her grumbling up those notes from her center and bringing the emotion with it too. We talk about R&B singers ain't singing in the rain like they used to. Or at least they don't sound like it. Everyone's a cool cat, cool girl, edgy with a tinge of toxic, right? And I like how she really bears herself on the track. Expression is a tool that she heavily utilizes, especially within her new album. So as we can see, we're hitting a lot of these R&B principles, and this leads me into what I think is so enticing about Coco as a serious new figure in R&B right now, and how I think she can be very important. Her respect for the genre, her respect to R&B. Her music is so heavily rooted and influenced by these R&B principles. Some of her biggest vocal inspirations are Aretha Franklin, CeCe Winans, and Mariah Carey, for example. And it's inspiring to see her get to this point because she spoke about being let go from her very first record deal, Hollywood Records. And she discusses the suppression of her sound when she was in that deal. They wanted her to be more sellable.
The people that they gave me wanted me to sound sellable. All right, sellable. Yeah, y'all do the math.
And we know that the average audience today doesn't seem to really rave about vocals, which I think some people oddly find vocals threatening, and I think that should be unpacked. But even in pop music, guys, people don't really push the bar. So when you have Coco Jones with a very soulful R&B sound, even at her young age, back to her Disney days, she sounded a lot more mature than she really was. That was something that they really tried to package, suppress, and quite literally tell her, you're singing too much.
Came to singing, it was also second nature that I didn't think about much until I had to start thinking about how to dial it back, because that was a constructive criticism I would get all the time, like less, just do less. It's like, it's too much.
This is not the first time that we have seen R&B artists on big labels is being told, you need to stop singing so much in a genre that is literally about singing. So it's refreshing that she's found her lane and an audience who is yearning for it, because it's all about finding your audience. I think some of the songs on her album, to me, I clearly like the album. I love the album a lot. Some of the songs are so crafted so masterfully, especially in the name of R&B, blending authentic elements of R&B, the instrumentation, the vocal agility, the emotion, the songwriting, while also still adding this modern twist. There's such an integrity throughout her work, paying honor to the past, but also thriving in the present. And I think that Coco has the ability to really please the R&B purists, right? Like the old schoolers, while also retaining the attention of the R&B radio listener, the modern R&B listener, depending on the track. But I think people have to be open to embracing and appreciating these strengths, because we will discuss this in a minute, but some of these strengths are some of the things that people don't really like about her music. Third, I also think that she just has this illuminating presence about her just as a person. In her interviews, I mean, she looks like she wants to be there. She's very engaged. She jokes, she laughs. She's just very radiant. And it's fun to have artists who like being in the spotlight. They enjoy their jobs and they embrace it. She's not too cool to care. She's transparent and is also very serious about her craft. She sings like she wants to be here. She sings like she wants to be here. She acts like she wants to be here. These are some of the reasons why I personally think she has a lot of strengths that need to be used. But a lot of these strengths have been complaints. Now we're going to talk about the internet pitchforks, okay? So this section is going to explore the many different pushbacks or critiques that an artist has been met with regarding their branding, music, sound, and persona, creating barriers in public opinion, acceptance, and approval. And I want to make this very clear. Music is subjective. You don't have to like anybody. The reason why I think it's important to talk about these in Coco Jones' case is we have a lot of people crying about
R&B is not the same.
R&B this.
People can't sing.
People can't sing. But when somebody comes on the scene and you guys see them doing something, if you don't like exactly how it's packaged, oh, I just don't like her voice. Oh, I don't like this. You guys hate on them and it completely suppresses what they could mean. You don't have to love it, but you can respect it. So let's talk about the very first internet pitchfork that I've seen most commonly is her vocal tone. The vocal tone, child. Now, remember that initial tweet that we mentioned in the beginning of the video, the one that made everybody pissed? He said, quote, Coco Jones is out singing every relevant R&B artist right now. You may not like her tone, their emphasis on tone, but her vocal ability is so ahead of what's expected in R&B right now. So he emphasized the word tone, her tone. And this has been a barrier for some listeners to where they just have said they cannot get past. I'm going to hold your hand while I say this. We all love a good high note. Okay? I do. But there is a beauty in depth in lower registers and deeper vocal ranges. And I do believe that there is an underappreciation and a non-understanding for deep voices, especially in female vocalists. Depth does equal range. Okay, when people think range, I think the average listener thinks, how high can you go? But range is depth, it's height, and it's the in-between. And so I understand a lot of people have become accustomed to the vocal divas who can whistle these notes. But people who have depth have range, and that should be respected. I think some of you guys are conflating the two. Especially when a lot of women are expected to live in a falsetto, or more specifically a soprano range, which is the most common female range. So I can't blame people for maybe being a little put off by having a deeper female vocalist. I think people have gotten so used to like the soprano range or this whispery tone or the mouth jumble that y'all hear a deep voice and you scream tone. That's not quite the same thing. But I digress. Now, I can understand from a tonal perspective, she does have like this nasally sheen to her voice sometimes, depending on the word or the phrasing. And sometimes it does kind of sound like just the tone. I'm not saying her vocal technique, but it kind of sounds like it sits in the back of her throat.
I know exactly where I'm going. I'm getting closer, closer every day.
But she's still singing from her diaphragm. I did see one user describe it as metallic nasality. But despite that, her enunciation is quite clear, which is the opposite that I can say about other nasally R&B singers that I do personally enjoy. I'm not going to name names, but you know who I'm talking about. Okay, there's a few of them. But I'm not knocking folks for having a preference. Sometimes your ears just like don't like something. I actually really like the tone. I think it stands out. It's unique right now. And I think that's a superpower of hers. She's one of those people who, if you don't like her tone, valid. Okay? But if you say she cannot sing, which I've seen people say that, you're objectively wrong. That is not true. And I think some people conflate the two. Or they use her tone as a way to discredit her talent. I'm going to say that again. They use her tone to discredit her talent. I can't understand this because as I was looking under this tweet, I was doing some research, just some anecdotal research. I saw somebody say that Coco Jones is more like a Mariah the Scientist in the vocal department. That is not true. And I saw a few people agreeing with that. That is not true. And this is where I think we need to be honest. I think you guys have a preference for things. I think some of your ears have been trained over the past few years because you guys have gotten so used to not hearing singers that it's okay to say, I think this person makes better music melodically. The way that they put together, I think they know their sound better. Or I like this person's tone better. But to sit there and try to compare the two of those ladies vocally is just inaccurate. And it's actually kind of disrespectful. But I digress. There seems to be some blatant denial, though, when we talk about Coco Jones. And I saw that a lot in these comments. It's like people didn't want to give her enough credit. I'm not saying you gotta love it, but people didn't want to give her credit. And I think it's the tone that you might not like versus saying that she can't sing well. Because, Your Honor, that's a lie. That is a lie. I don't know. I'm going to say this. Based on some of these live performances that I've seen, it's at the point where I may have to add her. When we talk about like the new class of R&B artists, I may have to add her to the class of Chloe and Halle's for real. Now, you can rank them how you want. But out of like some of the young talent, I'm not talking the 2010s. I'm talking about like this decade. She should be in that class. Mind you, there are many R&B artists that I enjoy. I think Kehlani is actually a great vocalist, but I really appreciate her tone. I love her tonally. I even enjoy music from people like Summer Walker, SZA, her, Janae. But we lack singers, okay? Or, because I do think Summer Walker is a great singer. But there has been a level of auto-tune that has been added on, or smoothing out the vocals that has been added on a lot with some of these mainstream artists. And the mumbling has taken over. You can't understand what people are saying anymore because they're not singing from their diaphragm. They're not opening their mouth. And like it or not, Coco gives vocalist energy. Just put some respect on it. So the tone has been conflated with the vocal technique or the vocals, but the tone I think is what really you guys are trying to say you don't like. And I do think that's valid, because we like what we like. But let's not act like she cannot sing. All right, let's talk about the next internet pitchfork is her sound. I've heard people have a mix of feelings about her sound, to the point where I've heard people say that she makes auntie music. And I was trying to pinpoint what that means and why, because first off, this seems wrong. But especially when there have been so many R&B fans who have steadily complained about the state of the genre, its lack of maturity today, the loss of vocal ability and vocal personality / passion. And y'all's favorite go-to phrase is, I miss 90s R&B. Coco actually recalls having hesitation when releasing her hit single ICU, initially saying, quote, when I made ICU, I didn't know if it would work at this time in this generation. I didn't know if it was too slow or too soulful. And I'm sorry, pause. Cut the cameras. That is so sad that we've gotten to a point where because of the standard change in R&B artists have to question if something is too soulful or too slow, when some of those qualities are a part or embedded in the fabric of the genre. Like, thank goodness that this song resonated with the right crowd.
No, but when I heard ICU, when I heard the track, I knew what I had to do, you know? Like, I was in there trying to make a bop 5, 6, 7, and 8. And when I heard that song, it just demanded so much emotion that I was like, let me go back to the girl I was singing Aretha Franklin at every audition at 9 years old. That soul, I'm so grateful for my mom who made me listen to the greats, because I can tap into that emotion and just make you feel. And I knew that that was the song for that.
And I think Coco came at the right time. I think people were kind of getting tired of this formulaic, soulless feeling R&B music, almost AI sounding. Like, how do you make R&B music and I cannot feel any soul in it? Like, I can't feel any emotion out of this. That's inherently a problem. And so for her to even, and thank God she stuck to her guns, but for her to even think of this single and think, is this too soulful? Is it too slow? That's not a good place to be. That's not a good thing. And thank God, though, it performed, because it showed her, it showed me that there is an appetite. And in the conversation of sound, it goes back to vocals in my analysis and research. Some people's issue was not her voice, but rather some of the songs that she chooses, that her voice doesn't maybe blend well on the record. Some people feel like her deeper range does not fit with a record. But I would argue that's not her responsibility to make people comfortable with that, because a lot of people just are not used to deep voices. People will very quickly say, I don't like this, versus understanding how a woman's voice sounds as an alto or on a deeper register. You feel me? You feel me? And as for her sound, we need to talk about her single, Taste. One of the singles for her debut album was Taste, and released February 21st, 2025. A song that actually samples Britney Spears' Toxic. And this made waves on the internet and may have been one of the most controversial times that Coco has been talked about to date. Most of the comments, it started off pretty positive, but it took a negative turn, with people saying the song felt more like a mashup than a sample, that the more Britney vocals didn't sound right. It sounded off and didn't mix well with the song itself. I think these things are all valid critiques. It's very music based. I think that's fair. And sonically, I was not a fan of the sample usage. I felt like it almost felt parodied a little bit, like the way that they produced those toxic vocals. It sounded a bit drowsy, but I do also still appreciate her attempt to take a track, translate this pop track into a more R&B cut. But it was, to me, the weakest part of the song, in my opinion. But if I'm being honest, this did make me a little bit concerned or slightly confused about what we would hear on her debut, because I still felt like this track read as more of like a generic radio R&B track. For being honest, though, you sometimes have to go that route to get the radio play, to get eyes on you, to meet audiences where they are, and I think that that's what it was. But the song itself wasn't even the only controversy, but the aesthetics. So this is going to get into our next internet pitchfork, was the imagery. But we'll rope imagery into this conversation because the Taste video was also met with a lot of mixed comments, and also comments adjacent to conversations people have had about Chloe Bailey in the past. And because Coco was showing a sensual and outright seductive side through her movement, through the choreography, it was jarring for some. But in this case, I don't even know if it was jarring as much. But some people felt like the choreography or the movement or the sensuality did not fit well in the way it was packaged in this video. It really spawned a lot of think pieces. Coco is a gorgeous woman, and for me, because I didn't grow up like watching her on Disney Channel that much, I didn't like associate the two and think, oh, she's being too sexy. It was just more of maybe some of the awkwardness of the movement, which again is more on the responsibility of the choreographer and the movement coaches than it's necessarily on her. But when we get into think pieces, I remember people having conversations saying, quote, why do all the R&B girls think they have to go the sexy route or play kitten. And as touched on my channel previously, there is a larger conversation in regards to how female artists often have to show up in the industry to get attention. In her case, similar to like a Chloe Bailey, people built a perception with her being on Disney. Okay, she was introduced as a child, so there is a natural occurrence where people are going to be like, whoa.
I feel like this is a version of Coco that I don't think people have ever seen. I mean, I know they haven't. And I'm nervous to see how people are going to react to me. And it was scary because I was going to get mixed reactions. I knew that. Like, some people were going to be like, you're this girl, you're the sing girl, don't dance, don't do that, don't be sexy, you know what I'm saying? And then other people were going to live for it. So I kind of just had to be okay with that. Because I feel like, what am I supposed to do? You know, it's my life too, and I'm still a developing artist. These are the things I want to do and try, and maybe one day I'll look back. I mean, I probably will look back at some of the things that I did and be like, but like, give me the time.
And I think some people felt like this was like, didn't feel like natural to her, or like, do you really want to do this, Coco? Because it's not, you don't give that.
Yo, I was just saying, like, the edits of it, like, it got chopped and screwed a lot because I wasn't feeling some of the ways that I looked. I wasn't feeling it for myself. Like, it didn't feel like me. You know, some of it felt like me trying to do something versus some of it felt like me being me. And I just kept what was like a green light in my spirit.
Again, very similar to conversations people had about Chloe Bailey. And this was the very first time that I saw people in droves speak out about that and had mixed opinions. But especially because R&B is not selling or charting really well currently. Not that a lot of music is in the first place. Let's get that very clear. It's been hard for R&B purists to really stick to that lane as artists while also getting mainstream attention. So as much as people had a lot to say, absolutely her most controversial release thus far, she needed a moment like that to draw attention. Especially when some of y'all were calling her auntie music. Most of the time though, her image, her wardrobe, she looks expensive, like chef's kiss, like she looks good. And it levied the comparison also to other artists, which is something that seems so innate for audiences to do. Specifically for this music video, people said that the imagery was very Normani coded. And I could see that. I could see that the color grading, the color schemes, the movement, maybe even the sound. So I also think through that comment, some people have tried to insinuate that Coco doesn't have enough of her own identity to stand out in ways that maybe other artists do. We talked about in my female R&B video how as much as all the girls are very similar, some of the R&B girls have been very good at curating a niche-like image. Like, look at SZA's image, right? More like an earthier feel. Jhené Aiko has a very curated image. So even in that case, I don't think some people look at her imagery as a strong suit or what pushes her over the edge. But I also think when it comes to R&B, for me, it's not always about the flash. I love an all-around performer, don't get me wrong, but I'm not distracted by that. If you're serving the vocals of your life, I really can probably just watch you stand there. I really don't necessarily need you to be trying to give me a 1-2 step if you're a vocalist. However, I understand though in an oversaturated market regardless, you do have to play the game, that you have to make efforts to stand out image-wise. And so it didn't fall on deaf ears that a lot of people were comparing her to Normani with this very specific video. And that creates a bit of like they already only think for women that there can only be so many at the table. Then you have a space for black women. So then it starts to be kind of hard, like how do you stand out? And for me, I think for Coco, it is her voice. Now, a conversation that I want to have very quickly that has been a pitchfork, and not as much the internet pitchfork, but the industry pitchfork, something that has been a recurring factor for Coco, is colorism. And she's spoken about this very candidly, very openly. A lot of this stems from her Disney Channel days. Many young black girls did express after the fact that actresses like China Anne McClain and Coco Jones resonated with them, and it served as representation. So when Coco came out with her What Really Happened video in September 2020, fans were disheartened to have the veil lifted and the glass shattered from something that they kind of already knew, but for Coco to confirm it was heartbreaking.
They're like, yeah, we don't know what to do with you. Please do the math in y'all's head because I'm not about to be over here. Y'all know what it is. I think was the most like traumatic thing about it for me is that I was like, all right, if I can just let them see like my talent, and then because of somebody else looks a little bit more marketable, doesn't matter, baby girl. It was very hard. Like I would cry. The colorism out here is crazy. Point blank and period. Y'all already know it.
What they were trying to do with this plug and play couldn't work with someone with my aesthetic and with my voice. I'm, this 13-year-old black girl who can sing like freaking 30-year-old. Like, you don't know what to do with that. When I got these deals and like things, etc., they weren't catered to a black girl. Like, it was like, you got this, but give it white. And I was like, how though? So I feel like
They weren't thinking, okay, how do we make this black girl work? It was more, how do we make this formula work on this black girl?
Psychologically, seeing other lighter girls get every job can mess with your literal mental health as a kid.
And it was a battle afterwards to be seen on our TV screens, with her chances feeling slimmer because of her skin tone, because dark-skinned women don't get represented a lot in media, let alone a variety of roles. Dark-skinned women are often very typecasted in roles. So that was also her having to protect herself, because she's not just going to take any role. But regardless of that fact, she realized in order to push through, be resilient, and make her career happen, that regardless of the reality around her, that she was going to have to reframe her mind. She wanted to dictate and decide her truth.
So much previous colorism trauma that, like, you got to ask yourself, where did this thought even stem from? Because it's just like, it's so grown now that it's just part of the way I talk. I don't look like that. That's for those girls. They look like that. They get that. I look like this. I get this. And it was just like, so like my truth until I started doing therapy. And my therapist was like, wait, what's that? Why do you say that?
And Coco touches on several times throughout multiple interviews how for dark-skinned women, especially in the industry, there is no room for mediocre.
But one thing that I've consistently seen in my life is the people who look like me are so good at what they do that there's no choice but them to eventually win, you know? I don't see any mediocrity in the women that look like me.
And I appreciate her willing to discuss this publicly time and time again, because y'all will really bully folks into A, not talking about it because y'all will deny it's true, so you gaslight them, or B, telling them to stop complaining. And one thing, like, I'm sure there'll be comments here saying, colorism, like you. If you guys can understand the concept of racism, there should be no reason why you cannot understand the concept of colorism. But even despite her knowing that that reality exists, she has not let that stop her. And I also feel it's important, and she said this herself, to have more dark skin representation in mainstream media. And I think it's powerful that she's speaking on her experience. And even in R&B now, like mainstream, you line a lot of them up. A lot of new artists, specifically the girls, a lot of them have very similar phenotypes. It has been a struggle over the years for dark-skinned artists to get attention and promotion that they deserve. Back in the day, I think that there were different kinds of women, skin tones, and body types that were able to really thrive in R&B. Like, executives were not necessarily just eyeing the physical, but that's because the voice was the epicenter and the focal point. And now I feel like we're really starting to see more of a resurgence. And speaking of promotion, we need to talk about the internet pitchfork, the recent event that happened regarding Coco Jones and promotion. So to promote her debut album, Coco went on The Breakfast Club on April 25th, 2025. She sat in the chair, and Charlamagne immediately, like top of the interview, says that her label doesn't care about her. Watch this.
It's your debut album.
It's my first album ever, yeah.
Why not more? I'm gonna tell you right now, Def Jam don't care about you.
Oh,
and I'm gonna tell you
Christ.
why. I'm gonna tell you why. They sent your album at 7:44 a.m. this morning, and I said no, we should cancel the interview because it's not fair to you as an artist, and it's not fair to us as hosts. So I don't know what the label told you, but that was the reason I was like, you know what? Let's cancel the interview.
I am a fan. I do feel like you deserve your moment, but it went down how he said it went down.
Yes.
So we're here.
I didn't get a chance to listen to it. Envy, that's why Envy left.
And he has a point. I mean, if you want to get a good interview, if you want to really dive into the material the way that it should be, teams should be sending that information. But I did also think that it was unprofessional and unfitting to address Coco on air instead of airing out his grievances with the team. And you know what? It's not even just about airing the grievance out, because I do think a level of transparency should exist with situations like this, just to say it outright, because audiences like me and you will watch it and say, well, why weren't they prepared? Well, why don't they know about this? Why was this interview so bad? And as an interviewer, they're like, well, I didn't receive the information that I needed. Because yes, I do think that some people will interpret this as Charlamagne looking out for her, right? Like rooting for her, saying that her label should have their ducks in a row to maximize the impact of the album. And I don't disagree, especially when many fans complain about the lack of promotion that R&B artists get. That a lot of labels look at certain R&B artists as second-class artists, like that is not their priority, especially not right now. But it did create this awkwardness because he kept continuously bringing it up throughout the interview.
I love that because it feels like, you know, you give your all to everything you do. Yeah. So when you give your all, but Def Jam doesn't, how does that make you feel?
Why are you still? And then, of course, like the world.
And that's why the label should send it to people, especially the radio stations.
New to me that people care about what I got going on personally. I'm like, y'all care about that? Okay.
How can we talk about your music if we don't get the album until 7:44? That's not your fault, though. Let's talk about Def Jam. Def Jam, you had the album since October? Def Jam didn't send it until 7:44 this morning.
You know, where is the grace in the room?
Like, okay, bring it up once, but now you're like throwing digs in there as if she was the one who was supposed to physically send you the music. So there has been this loop of they don't promote her with a lot of R&B artists. You guys hear that every day with Chloe Bailey. We hear that every day with Normani. They're not promoting her. That's why these artists aren't as big as they are. They're not being promoted the same way as a Sabrina Carpenter. They're not being promoted the same way as a Boom Boom Boom, right? But this is often a theory and conclusion that fans jump to, especially when it's R&B artists. But it's crucial also, I agree though, to check the label because we do know that the business has skewed talent over time. Excellent talent. And I do think it was a misstep on the part of her label.
What is this? How does this project? I don't have an advance, so I don't know what I know I should get an advance.
Ain't no way. No.
You should send me an advance.
You got this whole press list right here, but you ain't get to listen to the stuff.
I didn't get to listen to it yet, so tell me everything I need to.
But that has been something that people have been talking about. So in conclusion, let's round this up. What is it about Coco Jones? Where does this stand, this analysis, if you will? I know that there's been mixed opinions on her solo sound, her vocal tone, and overall debut, but buzz does work. The fact that people are talking about her is important and it's powerful. There is a level of subjectivity that we have to remember, that everyone won't like everything, and it actually does kind of become annoying when if you're a fan of someone and you're just telling, you need to listen to her, she's everything. Sometimes you have to let people organically understand and appreciate someone's music. You don't just want people to be listening to people just because, oh, I feel kind of bad, you know? I do encourage you guys to go check out her album. I thought it was very great. And if I'm being honest, R&B has been so quenched of rich vocals, mainstream, especially in this younger generation, that a lot of people's ears have either been trained to prefer quieter vocals or it's off-putting when someone is really experimenting vocally with riffs, runs, and their tone. And I think that in itself is something interesting for you guys to all reflect on. As for Coco, I think that she's an exceptional talent. I understand a lot of the critiques that we've talked about. I understand some of them, but it may just come down to cup of tea. Because the girl is uberly gifted, talented, point blank. That's it. But if we can't agree on that fact, then we can't have an honest conversation. So that's the something about Coco Jones. Like, comment down below, what do you guys think of Coco Jones? Make sure you guys click the link in my description to check out my reaction to her debut album and hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys want to see from me next, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.